Good afternoon, everybody. I welcome you to the second online session of the Big Data Value PPP. Today we're looking at industrial data platforms, and it's my pleasure to introduce you to 4 speakers from the various projects later on. But first, quickly, my name is Andreas Metzger. I'm representing here the BDVA and the BDVe support action. I'm from Paluno, that's the Software Engineering Research Center of the University of Duisburg-Essen. And the webinars were kindly supported by my colleague Vanessa Stricker. You see, I guess, also on the video transmission, and also by my colleague Thomas Pariente-Lobo from BDVe and also from Atos, who helped to set up all this webinar technology. So let me start with a quick agenda and then a quick introduction before I give the floor to the other colleagues. So we'll have a few opening words from our Commission representatives. It's Kimo Rossi and Malte Bayer-Katzenberger from the Commission. They will introduce you to the little bit bigger landscape of where we are situated today, and also the important role of these data platform projects to pave the way towards the next, let's say, European data ecosystem. We will then follow this by 4 presentations as I indicated. The first will be given by Spiros Athanasiou. He's from Ethna Research and Innovation and representing Opertus Mundu as a project coordinator. Then we will have Theo Kontagiannis, Business Development Manager at Agrono, and he's the work package leader of the FSM project and will provide his insights on this project. Third one is Martin Serrano, unit head of Inside Galway and coordinator of the I3 project, I3 market project, sorry. And last but not least, we have Paco Valverde from ITI in Valencia, and he's the technical coordinator of data ports. The idea is that you will get a 20-minute presentation on some of the key elements of these projects. We allow for 5 minutes of clarification questions if there's any, but then really plan to have a Q&A session at the end where we can touch on common interest topics, traversal, let's say, questions in order to identify what could be interesting pointers to further collaborate. This actually brings me to the practical consideration when talking about asking questions. Because we're here in a webinar and not a typical web conference, it's only the presenters and moderators who can speak. But as participants, you can interact with us. You can type your questions into the question panel, and I will make sense of your question while you type them and either then post them as clarification questions at the end of the presentations, or we will collect them and structure them for the Q&A session after the 4 presentations. The presenters are aware that we record these sessions with the ambition to make this available online also for people who have not been able to join today. So if you have any objections or concerns and you don't want to have what we discussed today be made public, please feel free and drop me an email so we can either edit it out or see how we can resolve this, okay? But for the time being, we assume that all we discuss is public and can also be shared with the other colleagues who were not able to join today. What are the aims of this online session? Well, initially we plan to have a real 2-day workshop with all these new data platform workshops. Unfortunately, this was not possible in the current situation, so we split this up into 3 online sessions. Today we're looking at the industrial data session. And one of the main ambitions is to start collaborations among the projects, because for sure there will be shared concerns, shared challenges, maybe even synergies between the projects. So it's really good to understand from each other what's going on. To this end, we suggested that the presentations will be structured along a couple of key elements, like what are the key objectives of your project, what are the key innovations. After all these data platform projects are innovation actions, so it would be interesting to see where the innovation will lead to. Understand the use cases with which the data platforms will be validated or focusing on. Some key characteristics of the data sets, because this could be instrumental in understanding what are the typical data sets in the future data ecosystem. And finally, some expected business impact, and this could be also quite important, challenges you currently face, where we may also then maybe connect you with some of the colleagues of the BDVA task forces who were experts in some of the data-related topics. The intention is to collect important topics also for a series of follow-up workshops that may resolve or revolve around a very specific topic. So this is really just the first element of a series of collaboration opportunities we started. And the final point, this is related to my previous point on making the slides or the recordings public, is this will of course be a first also public visibility of your project in the PPP ecosystem. My last slide, this is the current tranche of the data platform projects that started in January. And as you can see, we clustered them in 3 topical clusters, like we also structured the webinars. Yesterday we had the first one on mixed data platforms. Today we have the industrial data platform one. And tomorrow we have the personal data platform. And of course, we are aware that there may be also overlaps and interesting, let's say, collaboration opportunities across these clusters, but we wanted to make the webinars a little bit focused and not too long. But you're invited to join the others, of course. And as I said, there will be follow-up workshops, webinars, where we can really connect people topic-wise in a much more focused way. You will find all this information also on the BDVA website, and there will also be the place where we will publish the final recordings and the slides of the presenters if you're willing to share them so people can really follow up what was discussed today. Okay. And with this, I will gladly hand over to our colleagues from the Commission. Feel free to also post your questions to the Commission colleagues if there's any, so we can also answer them after they have provided their intervention. And I think, Kimo, I guess you give a brief opening and then we continue with Malte, like yesterday, I assume. Thank you.
Thank you, Andreas. Indeed, I will give very brief introduction. So my name is Kimo Rossi. So those who did not follow the webinar of yesterday, I work in the Data Policy and Innovation Unit of DG Connect of the European Commission. My colleague Malte, who will talk after me, works in the same unit, so we are colleagues. I'm more in the technical side and project management side, and Malte is...
Kimo, we seem to have lost your audio. Can you speak up maybe? Is it only me or you also cannot hear?
Policy and politics and regulation side. First of all, thank you for joining. Okay. Talk long, I just say that now we are entering the hardcore of data platforms when we're talking about industrial data platforms. So it's really being able to share and exchange, trade, sell your valuable business data, industrial data. And this is the really important part of making a data economy happen. So being able to sell data as a commodity. So I hope that with these 4 projects today, we get to very concrete illustrations of how this data economy of the future might look like. So I'm very much looking forward to these presentations. So thank you for joining again, and thank you in advance also for all the presenters. So I'll leave it here. Now for my colleague Malte.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you for inviting us to speak here. As Kimo said, I'm working with him in the same team, and as I said yesterday, this is almost like Christmas coming true after our writing of the work program, I think 3 years ago, for these projects that have been called for, evaluated, and now are really ready to start. And I'm congratulating all of you for having gotten the grant. I'm trying, my main mission in the team is also to translate learnings from the funding actions into policy actions. The question of enhancing data access and usability and even reusability, so the usability beyond the initial purpose of collection, is something that this unit has been working on for many years, mainly on open government data. But it has become clear that with the advent of big data, that the secondary use also of privately collected data is becoming very important. So this is our main focus. Understandably, a lot of what we call data sharing is also, I would say, merely digitizing existing paper-based collaborations. So the lorries who have papers to show that they can pick up some container somewhere, gives them rights to see some of the data. Now we're digitizing all this, as is very important and very fine. Our main mission is to say, let's leverage the new oil, if you want, into new purposes. And that will include data monetization and sharing. So we have had quite some discussions on the free flow of data, which is mainly was meant as a policy jargon to say flow across borders, but we should also look at the free flow across organizations. And some of you may have remembered the discussion on the data ownership right that Commissioner Oettinger, the previous commissioner responsible for us, triggered, which was exactly about getting the legislation also right for allowing the exchange of data. We have gotten away from this, now look more into enhancing the access, and the solutions can be legal. You force people to share, but most often they shouldn't be legal. They should be. So we should, what we try to find out now with the projects that we look at today and also looked at yesterday and tomorrow is to what extent can also technology empower the companies to monetize on their data, but in the way that they still keep control and ownership or sovereignty over the data. That's why these projects are so interesting for us. As you may know, we will try to translate some of the ready-to-go practices, technologies, tools into a deployment action under a new framework program that will start next year under the new financial 7-year round. The program is called Digital Euro Program. We call the action European Data Spaces. And just to say a few words on these data spaces, they are basically one of these projects that we look at today zoomed large, in the sense that they should host more players, more use cases, and more data sharing. There's no standard template of what a data space would look like. This is exactly what we want to find out with the tools and technologies developed by you. And then go back and say, look, I think we have reached a certain state of the art that data sharing can happen at scale across industries and solve many problems for many people. And this is really the key expectation that we have for this action. You may be aware that the Commission published a data strategy in February this year, where the idea of creation of data spaces was at the heart. And it's about marrying the two sometimes conflicting objectives of enhancing access to data for more organizations, companies, while also keeping control. And we really hope that a lot of the solutions are in the technologies. So this has big attention. You know, Commissioner Breton was the former CEO of Atos, which is obviously part of some of the actions. So he has a good knowledge of what the future evolutions may be from the product line that he has overseen. So his main belief is that we will move a lot to the edge computing situations where more data processing happens closer to the collection points, and that gives already some control and leverage over the use of the data, but maybe we need also some more. I'll leave it maybe at this, and happy to take questions in the chat.
Thank you very much, Malte, for that. We didn't have any immediate questions now, but we'll keep this chat open also for questions directed to you, and we can also recapture them then the Q&A session if you like. Okay. Thank you very much. So thanks for the brief intervention, and also thanks to Kimo for setting the scene for what follows now. And with that, I would kindly hand over to Spiros, who presents Opertus Mundi or Mundi. Explain how it's pronounced correctly, I assume. The floor is yours, Spiros.
That's great. So hi everyone. I'm Spiros Athanasiou from the Athena Research Center. The name is Opertus Mundi. If it sounds familiar, if it looks familiar, if you see something relating to maps in the background, this is because, if you just see my screen again, this is because we are working for geospatial data. So the presentation, which you can download, contains lots of slides. I'm going to just provide you an overview of the project. So these are the official facts, figures. We have started and probably end by December, but the Opertus Mundi marketplace will be commercially available in a year and a half from now. Our partners, besides Athena RC, we have two large industrial research partners, Fraunhofer IAS and TU Delft. We have two SMEs on the geospatial sector, Get from Greece and Synergies, who is very active in the Copernicus and the European Earth observation domain. We have a legal counsel from France, CMG. We have a branding expert for space innovation, ASO. We have a geomarketing company on board. We have an expert on board, GeoRepublic, on open source software. And we also have user interface, user experience experts. So already from the synthesis of the consortium, you can see that it's not only research partners. We have many industrial partners and also partners with expertise in key areas in terms of delivering an actual commercial marketplace. So why us? Our background is from geospatial data and open data, both catalogs or Earth observation data. Scientific data infrastructures we have developed, we operate, we support several on a national and EU level. We lead open source development for geospatial data. One of the members of our team is currently the president of the board of the Open Source Geospatial Foundation, that is Angelos Georgios. Our partners provide the full suite of commercial web services. We do have significant expertise on commercial grade user interfaces, as well as significant expertise on licensing and contracting within digital marketplaces. So our motivation, why geospatial data? Well, frankly, it's the foundation and the value multiplier of our physical and digital economy. You might have read it before somewhere. 80% of data available are geospatial, have some terms for location. Geospatial data have cross-border and cross-sector coverage. The roles of producers and consumers are fluid all the time. They form extremely complex and expansive value chains. And just a reminder, the data economy on a policy level, on a policy level in Europe and specific actions, has been greatly influenced by open and public geospatial data. The Inspire Directive, the PSI Directive, and also the OpenStreetMap community. So geospatial data is a driver for innovation on data and the data economy. Now, about the market. So there are great technology foundations in place, but these are driven mostly by the public sector and the value of the geospatial data themselves. So satellite, this is a very large investment that feeds science and decision making. So we need to make sure that we have great standards for metadata, data, and services with 99% almost uniform vendor support across the board. However, these standards about metadata, data, etc., mostly serve the public sector and companies around the public sector. So these are built mostly for curation, provenance, and not the industry. The market currently is dominated by three basic models: open data, you're familiar with them, freemium, like Google Maps, and big companies, behemoths, TomTom, Here, etc. As well as one important trend. There are no data themselves alone. They are intertwined with services, so how data are used. And the idea is to make it simpler, easier, faster to use data within systems and services. Now, the challenge, the problem consumers have is that while open data are great for experimentation, they are of low quality. They do not have the expansive thematic coverage needed for many companies. License clearing in commercial applications can be a challenge for many companies, as well as integration. Premium models, the same thing, they are essentially a walled garden. They appear easy, low cost at first, but they introduce very restrictive business models in terms of what you can do. Now, when you go to a big company, however, the quality and the thematic coverage is great, but there is an explicit lock-in in data and services, and the costs rise. So there is a demand across the board in Europe from big, small, large SMEs, from individuals, from innovators, for quality assured, simple to use, rich proprietary geospatial data. However, this demand is not reaching the data owners and producers across Europe, all the hundreds and thousands of companies in Europe producing directly or indirectly data. To put it in simple terms, providing responses to these questions where I can buy X dataset for a specific area is not possible to provide. Already in the Opertus Mundi project, we have performed a mystery shopper exercise where we have tried to find 160 assets for various locations in Europe. And as you can see for the data from these results, complete information, the documentation, the schema, available samples, even the price before purchasing an asset is not ready to be found. And less than 1% of the assets we found actually contain this available information before being purchased. So we need an intervention. We need an actual digital single market for geospatial data. So European Union data owners and producers are not able to harness the increased demand. The market is still fragmented and disjoint across Europe. There is no single point, one search engine, one point where I can publish, discover, and purchase proprietary geospatial data assets. The contracts and licensing terms between owners are not homogenized in a way that facilitates comparison, evolution, and reuse. And proprietary data owners, quite frankly, cannot provide the same level of bundled service offerings, APIs, interactive maps, analysis services. So it is important that we provide this facility to data owners so that they gain a competitive advantage. So our goal is to aggregate offer and demand, provide fair, transparent terms, streamline the data asset lifecycle, and support value co-creation. A reminder, according to a very recent PSI publication, the high-value data in Europe, we have 6 thematic categories. Out of those, 4 out of 6 are directly and directly related to industrial proprietary geospatial assets. So we are perfectly aligned with what the PSI has already identified as high-value data. So what will the Opertus Mundi marketplace be? So what we will deliver, these are critical words, we will deliver a trusted, secure, and scalable industrial data market, which will act as a single point for the streamlined and trusted discovery, sharing, trading, remuneration, and use of proprietary geospatial assets, guaranteeing low cost and flexibility to accommodate current and emerging needs of data economy stakeholders, regardless, and this is important, of the size, domain, and expertise. Or, in single line, we want to deliver the first EU marketplace for industrial geospatial data. So, just to recap, geospatial data is one of the most valuable categories of industrial data assets, yet there is no digital marketplace available for them. The technical foundations are in place with data publishing workflows, data management solutions, and value-added services, and we honestly believe that the output of the project, the Opertus Mundi marketplace, can be in itself a sustainable business because there is both consumer and market demand. A few critical directions for the project that will allow us to have a critical mass of data providers and data consumers in 2 years from now, before the end of the project. We want to build trust. So for data providers, this means that we need to protect their IP and complement existing channels, do not antagonize them, bringing clients for them. For consumers, it is really important to provide rich information before purchase for any given assets, have extremely clear, transparent terms and conditions, and allow them to scale with no hidden cost. Now, another key priority, keep it simple. So make it very simple in terms of the know-how and time required for data providers to publish assets, monitor the revenue, and provide added value services through our platform. For consumers, same things apply. Make it very simple to search, buy, and use assets. Another key priority, be fair and transparent. This means that the contract terms, how remuneration goes, The business model of the platform and the business model we support between consumers and data providers in the platform must be transparent as well as legally sound. We do have to negotiate the different national and EU level legislation, especially in terms of contracts, know your customers, etc. Another thing, automation. We want to streamline the life cycle and essentially minimize the operating expenses of this marketplace. As small as the costs are, the better its sustainability it's going to be. And since we are talking about sustainability, we are not going to be greedy and short-sighted. So, for example, we are not going to charge a fee per transaction. We are not going to charge a fee for people to join the platform. We want to invite participation and build a critical mass and generate a revenue from value-added services we provide ourselves. I'm not going to go through the architecture, but from a bird's eye view, we have three big components. On the left is OP Core, Opertus Mundi Core, for publishing and trading assets. On the right is OPX, where we provide value-added services, and a final layer, OP Management. So one by one, OP Core is a software component for publishing and trading assets. We want to decouple the data from the value-added services. This means that when a data owner comes and trusts us with her data, we want to be very frank, very sincere, and have proof that their data are not going to reach another value-added service, are not going to go in another system. So OP Core is the single entry point for consumers and providers, does not manage assets, only their metadata. Consumers can search, compare, and purchase assets with multifaceted search recommendation engines, clear terms and conditions before purchase. The owners, and this is critical, can publish assets and define their terms and their price via harmonized EU-wide contract templates, as well as harmonized pricing models so that it is possible to compare assets between them. Payment is performed within the platform as well as delivered by the platform or the owner in case the assets are very large, for example, in size. The value-added services, OPX. When a data owner has provided us their explicit consent, they have allowed us to market a value-added service based on their assets. So we can split. There is a business model supported over there where we can share profits between the platform and the data provider. So OPX will provide an open-ended suite of value-added services. It will manage assets and will introduce services of increasing intrusiveness for the assets, from simple transformation for a file to an actual analysis to custom integration or thematic maps. There are clear terms and conditions as well as a revenue sharing with data owners in advance, so owners know exactly what they can expect to get in return. Opt-in and opt-out for data owners is unrestricted. We are not going to demand any sort of contract legally bound forbidding them to leave the platform at any point in time. The owners select themselves what asset and what value-added service to provide. We handle the instantiation and the automatic publication of the service, for example, the web map service. And also the sales statistics, the analytics are integrated in the owner dashboard, so they can monitor exactly what money they make, how the data are being used, etc. Consumers purchase these assets, these value-added services, exactly in the same way. Now, in terms of what value-added services we're going to provide, this is again open-ended. We can start from simple file storage, profiling, transformation services, etc. Moving on to geospatial data management, OGC services, mapping, tiling, integration, and building the knowledge graph, as well as hosted Jupyter notebooks in various styles and bundles, where we package Jupyter notebooks analysis services with specific data assets for a specific domain. For example, retail planning. The OP management layer, this is essentially where the platform lives, instantiates, it handles business modeling. It ensures everything in the platform is auditable, what happens with the data, the transactions, the contracts. It is the basis where everything, all the contracts or transactions are stored, and also handles user support. Now, our universal selling points, what makes us different? We will not have any fees for data sales, for registration, like some other marketplaces. Why? It doesn't really make sense. We want to build the user base. We want to introduce new revenue streams for all. According to our business model so far and insights, we do believe that a sustainable business model can be formed around this. We will provide one place, one single place in Europe to find, purchase, and use geospatial data. So we will act both as an intermediary as well as a service provider ourselves. And the idea is to maintain clients, keep them after they have purchased an asset by providing them simple to use, low cost services for using it. We will provide also simple services that everyone can use, not only geospatial experts, actually anyone else but geospatial experts, starting from small companies, innovators, startups, companies that indirectly use geospatial data. We want to democratize this API and services. And finally, we will make sure that everything is traceable and auditable by external third parties in the platform. So in order to build trust for owners. And final slide, these are the joint challenges, things we believe that have some impact and will be of interest for all industrial data platforms. So in terms of legal foundations, how do we treat clients? Are they companies or individuals? So this means having to enforce GDPR or not. The contract law, EU-wide, national revisions, national issues we need to have in mind. The language, the text, the terms of harmonized contracts and terms that can be enforced across Europe. We do need the digital single market, as well as how everything fits within the current legal landscape of Europe. Platform to Business Directive, E-commerce Directive, Know Your Consumer, GDPR, etc. Liabilities. What are the liabilities of our marketplaces to data providers, to consumers? Then any liabilities for providers from consumers because they have participated in the platform. This again is not entirely clear. Business models now. It is a balancing act of having and bringing and creating a critical mass versus having revenues that can support a sustainable business model, as well as all the various types of business models that can fit within a data marketplace. For example, fees, registrations, paper API, paper raw use, etc. Another point, a commercial entity. Now we will build a digital marketplace. Our plan is to establish a new company because we will have actual financial transactions taking place. That is electronic payments, invoices, exchanging, and etc. And finally, issues of trust. How make sure that what happens inside the marketplace is auditable, how we ensure that we protect the IP of data owners, and how we handle disputes. So that's the end of my presentation. After this slide, you can also find some slides presenting our services to end users, data providers, and data consumers in case you want to get a few more insights about what the business model of the marketplace will be. So I think that's it from my side.
Thanks a lot, Spiros, for the excellent presentation. We have one immediate question, which is related to standards. This was posed from a colleague from the BDVA standards group. And the concrete question is whether you're looking into how to integrate your work with interoperability and standardization work, something like which is done in SC38 Cloud Data, Data Governance, or AG9 Data User Standards.
We will fully adopt the standards by the Open Geospatial Consortium, all the suite about how data are structured, used, etc. And only new addition, which is something we cannot reuse and introduce in other projects, is a new schema about the metadata of the commercial assets, but we will publish it. We will ensure linking and interoperability with ISO, as well as several other standards. But in any case, this is something to be published and shared with the industry.
Very good, thank you. So this was the only clarification question so far. So I think we can then move on to the next colleague presenting. But feel free, dear participants, to further type questions regarding Spiro's presentation or some of the topics you may find interesting, and I'll collect them for the Q&A session later on. So thanks again, Spiros, and floor is yours, Theo.
And I think now you can see me and see my screen, right?
Yes.
All right. So thank you again for this invitation, and thank you for having us here. So today I'm going to present the FSM, the Food Safety Market, a project coordinated by Agronow, the Food Safety Intelligence Company. And I would like to start my presentation with a story. So I would like to introduce to you to Anna, that she works as a food safety professional in the Greek branch of an international retailer. So Anna, as you can understand, currently, due to COVID, she is working from home. So she needs to ensure that the food that they sell at their supermarkets is healthy and safe. And also, normally you might not see her at home. You will see it as that photo, being in a production plant, traveling and inspecting facilities and production sites of their suppliers, and see how they ensure food safety and hygiene across their product supply chain. But there is a but, and during the COVID-19 outbreak, it is impossible for her to travel. So the question is, how does Anna and other food safety and quality assurance professionals in food production, in food distribution, in retail ensure that what it gets on our plate is clean and safe? So as we speak, a major digital transformation and a great data chain challenge is happening. And it is linked to one of our most valuable resources. This is our food. And with that said, I would like to introduce you to the food safety market, the FSM as we call it, which is an SME-powered industrial data platform that aims to boost the competitiveness of the European food certification. So as you may see here, the project kicked off just a month before the COVID-19 outbreak hit Europe. So we see this relevance, and we see the connection of supporting data chains, and we really are devoted to our mission to create a transparent data-powered certification ecosystem, which will allow for all of us to have access to safe food. And this is actually being developed by a diverse consortium led by SMEs, consisting of deep tech SMEs like us, Agronow, Sirma, Ubedec, and Origin Trail, and AgTech SME, BDVe, which owns an awarded farm management system, a multinational European certification group like TÜV Austria, with different branches spread across Europe. The top, actually, the one and only PDO and PGI, one certification company in the country which produces the highest quantity of wine in the world, in Italy. This is Valor Italia. And two highly experienced academic and research partners, University of Vienna, where this team works on data protection and data security, and also a first-class global agri-food research organization, the Wageningen University for Food Science and Research. So currently, the global food industry relies on getting certified according to specific food safety standards. So the FSM project will build upon the state-of-the-art blockchain technologies to ensure that we will have an open and collaborative virtual environment that facilitates exchange and connection of data between the different food safety actors, and also enable to them to share information that is critical to ensure that we have a certified food on our plate. So the FSM aims to serve a multi-sided market, which consists of over 3.6 million companies. And this is a multifaceted market, and we foresee that we are in the center of it, serving each and every one of this diverse group of stakeholders with credible food safety and certification data. And also, we will see it also afterwards that many of these stakeholders are the ones that will extensively test and pilot the services of the FSM. So moving on, the main objectives and key innovations that the project will bring. And first of all, and the stage actually that we are right now is to understand the complexity of the food safety certification industry, and also the whole processes behind auditing, and translate them into actionable requirements for the FSM platform. After this, we'll follow the development of the backbone and front-end services of the FSM platform in order to ensure that it supports secured and controlled data sharing workflows and transactions among the stakeholders. There will be piloting, and will be extensive piloting among 11 different pilots spread across Europe, and I will tell you more details on that with various stakeholders from the food supply chain. And also, another key objective is to design and implement and also validate with the partners mentioned above a commercial strategy focusing on driving the adoption of the FSM services. So the key advancements that the FSM aims to bring is to incorporate advanced semantic technologies supporting data interoperability and integration capabilities. So apart from that, it will support multilinguality, especially for localized food safety applications. It will also include a multi-sided data brokerage service where actually different actors like farmers or food manufacturers can act as traders of their own data, and this can also be used for the purpose of certification or product risk assessment or the overall verification of their of the processes that they follow. And last but not least is the real-time processing and big data storage and visualization capabilities that it will encompass. So what about the use cases? What we are going to pilot actually, because the real challenge at this case through FSM is to empower all actors involved in the food certification, ranging from the manufacturers to the inspectors and retailers, with the powerful tools of that will enable them to exchange data, link data, and integrate data. So the pilots, the 11 pilots, as you see on the map, will run across Europe, Middle East, and West Africa. We will have companies and other supply chain stakeholders to test and drive the adoption of the FSM platform. You see the countries taking part, and our piloting exercises will focus on the business needs expressed by different stakeholders. So again, the key is to make these processes that are already being followed, that are data intensive, make them easier and create reliable access to the data that, for example, the certification bodies are inspecting. Also, as expected by food distributors and retailers, enable an easier and more reliable access to the data that are relevant to their suppliers, all the product batches that they are getting from their suppliers. And as regards the farmers and food manufacturers, they need and they request an easy way to share in the appropriate format the data that they monitor, ensuring that their products are safe and compliant. So the foreseen outcomes of the FSM project are to specialize and adapt all, let's say, the outcomes and the business validation scenarios to the local needs of the food companies and the different supply chain stakeholders. Also to ensure that everyone channels secure and trusted data through the FSM platform, and also motivate the local stakeholders around the pilots to engage with food companies and their supply chain stakeholders, and leading to gradually onboard actual clients to get used the FSM platform. So how are we going to measure this digital transformation challenge? These three criteria are the way that you are going to measure the progress. I would highlight the percentage of the actual business revenue that each of the certification partners are enabling through the platform. This is we aspire to have over 10% of the agri-food certificate channels through the FSM platform at the final year. So as you may understand or may be aware, the food certification sector is consists of a wide variety of data formats, various data types, and of course full with standards. And with standards, I mean also the food safety standards that are being followed. So you may see indicative data types from measurements, lab test reports, supplier data, And as you may see, there are already existing ontologies that are being followed. So the challenge here is to map these ontologies with the ontologies that we are going to develop within the FSM. So the overall business impact, before I will go to that, I would like to highlight just some key characteristics of the market. As I said, it is a market that is actually in the phase that it's being transformed and disrupted. There are examples around the globe that big retailers are already adopting blockchain-powered solutions for data sharing in the sake of food traceability, and it's a market which constantly grows, and it is expected to reach 500,000 food producers. So if we were about to measure one key metric, and that would be it. So we aspire to have 800 certificates, food safety certificates issued via the FSM platform out of the 8,000 certificates that our partners publish each year. So we aim that in 2023, we will have more than 600 food companies sharing their data through the FSM platform, and also farmers participating there, making it easier for and also affordable for the majority of the food SMEs. Also, we see this having a tremendous impact on the overall farm-to-table food safety policy of the European Union, and also contribute at last to increase the consumers' trust to the European food sector through transparent and reliable food safety data sharing. So the challenges that, let's say we start the phase, as I said, we are on the beginning, and to regard to the data, are dealing with the data interoperability and the semantics. So how we are going to model, interlink, and connect different food safety data types and ontologies. I mentioned here some examples of standards that you may have heard regarding food safety. You will see that we will be at a multilingual environment. So this will be also a great challenge. And also we foresee that the integration of the platform with third-party system is something that will be a challenge as well. So we will tackle it with different approaches. So at the end, with that said, the key goal, let's say, of the FSM platform is to democratize food safety data. So to create a European platform for secure and controlled data sharing of proprietary and commercially sensitive data related to food safety, risk assessment, and certification. So that's all from my side, and thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Theo, for the great presentation. Very nice. I would have one maybe clarification question. You mentioned this concept of certification. I was wondering how this would exactly facilitate that you can also ensure the data quality of the, let's say, participants that are certified. Because in the end, things like bad data quality could mean some false negatives for the safety identification, right? So do you incentivize or control, or what's your mechanism?
Yes, for sure. This would be monitored, let's say, by the partners on the ground for this process. But also we are following specific standards and specific ways of sharing and ensuring the high quality of data through, for example, the origin train protocol. I think I have mentioned that we have one company, Origin Trail, which with the protocol that they have put in place, they ensure that data is shared in a high quality, let's say, and also in the same sense, ensure that this data remains unharmed by the ones that will access them, for example.
Okay. Thank you very much for clarifying. Very good. With it, we can move to our next or third project in line, the i3 market, and I hand over to Martin, who's presenting that. Martin, the floor is yours. Seems Martin is on mute. Can you help Vanessa unmute?
Thank you. Yes, I was just muted by the organization. So please stay with me in the i3 market. So good afternoon. I will just share my screen now, full screen. The i3 market is a project that started just this January. So we are in the process of assembling the project and designing the actions in this period, a difficult period for everyone. But I will do my best to explain what is the current status and the situation in the project. So basically, I'm leading I'm coordinating the project. I have been in this world of European projects for some time, always developing technologies and infrastructures and platforms. And now with the big data, so we have grown into the stack of having all these applications producing data and all these sensors in the IoT and in the cloud information. And this is a good opportunity for us in this i3 market to precisely capitalize the opportunity of all the data that is available. And by focusing in industrial platforms like Siemens, like Atos and IBM, which are our partners in this project, so we saw an opportunity to capitalize on this and effectively do this opportunity. My talk goes into 4 sections, which is the approach of the i3 market project, a little bit of an evolution of the marketplaces in how we see this can be the race that we can take an opportunity in the i3 market to take an impact, and also the characteristics of an open source versus standards in the marketplaces. So it's well known that there is a race now for some years in providing marketplaces, and some people mislead or misunderstand what exactly is the objective of a marketplace, and particularly in the big data domain, we need to still understand what exactly will be the benefits of these marketplaces in data space. Obviously, this is one of the objectives of the project as well. That's why I will emphasize these open source characteristics and standards. And of course, I will just go into the details a little bit without too much without the intention to be too technical in how this will be offered as an open API for the improvement of the marketplace. So by saying just the project information, we are 14 partners listed, but it's a kind of a double participation from 2 Siemens, Siemens Romania and Siemens Munich. So that's why we have 13 partners here listed, but essentially it's 14 partners officially. It's kind of the development part and the management part of both sides in Siemens. This was a strategy precisely to enable the full ecosystem of Siemens to be exploitable in an industrial case. As was mentioned before by Kimo, this is an innovation action that we should address in full and with all the seriousness that is implied. It's a 3 years project, and of course the budget from the Commission is 5 million, almost 5 million, a little bit more. So we have 4 main foundations in the project, which obviously is the addressing of the industrial data from the big data perspective. We have been struggling the open source concept in terms of openness, in terms of interoperability, in terms of integrative and quick deployment. And we also have the security and privacy as a major aspects on that. The intention in here is to get the trust of the ecosystems behind the data platforms, behind the marketplaces, in order to be what we call enabling the data economy. And this is one of the major kind of objectives and impact in the community, the data economy habilitation. Interoperability is the aspect that we will address with the standardization part, and I will go into the details in how we are understanding this interoperability. The I3 is intentionally summarizing the intelligence of the platform to be adaptive, the interoperable aspect of a standard approach, and the integrative and deployable by facilitating the tooling in the best way that for a developer, for a company to adopt and adapt the solution. So that's why it's I3. And obviously the marketplace comes from this backplane with trusted and secure software tools. The idea is precisely to address these needs, and that's why we have the 50%, almost the 50% of the industrial partners are SMEs. So we are incentivizing that the industry can go from the SMEs towards the big industries, but without forgetting that the big industries in Europe and in the world are leading this race towards the data economy. So it's the main characteristics that I wanted to in somehow differentiate and emphasize is that this interoperability does not come by accident. It's an evolution. In the first generation of big data platforms, we have compatibility aspects. We're talking about data sharing, data repositories. In the second generation of this evolution, we have the standards that has been generated or been produced in this ecosystem, and then the factor standard motivates the adoption of all these standards towards the interoperability aspects. But then when we go to this third generation, or what we say the exploitation of the data economy, is when we have these standards as a reference implementations, and then we start to integrate and expand the ecosystem towards those different technologies or different solutions. Obviously, the advantage of the I3 market that we are going to address, or we're going to offer to the community and to the society, is the easy integration and deployment of that. How we are going to achieve that one? By using the most adopted technologies now, which are called DevOps, development and operations, which is a methodology that is very industrial oriented. Is essentially generated in the industry to precisely deliver the results in a very structured manner and in a timely ways, guaranteeing or with guarantees that this is going to be deployed and integrated. So we are obviously committed to this DevOps philosophy. And of course, the security and trusted implies that all the security technologies, all the data protection, and all the information accessibility will be embedded in a certificate, electronic certificates of obviously the platform's protection in terms of delivering and manipulation of the data, all in the framework and in the context of European space, which is obviously our GDPR and our PSD2 in case of transactions, and all these standards that exist as a regulatory framework for our states. Now, what are the innovations, which was one of the requests from us to present and discussing here? Obviously, the creation of the decentralized marketplaces. Today, the majority of the marketplaces are centralized because this has been designed like that. So the exploitation of a marketplace is the main asset, economically speaking. But now we are going to exploit and decentralize this one by having more data-driven economy aspects. And how we are going to exploit this one, as I mentioned before, we're going to use this opportunity of the marketplaces third generation to precisely exploit the data asset rather than the marketplace repositories. Today, the data is not only the information in the database, it's also it's distributed and the easy access to that distributed data in the context of big data marketplaces. The scalability is the second aspect or element that we want to have it as an innovation, because we are extending these repositories in terms of assets. So we will have different versions or different pilots as we have, and these will be extensions of all these marketplaces, and they can interconnect or interoperate to exchange not only the data but also the transactions and also the data economy enabling this ecosystem. By saying this, This will imply that we will have obviously some deployments in the industrial physical servers, and then we will have this offer as a data services for external people, what we call the open API approach. So this will be the major challenge. We know this one by definition because the 3 major partners in this consortium has been somehow agreed, and that was the major achievement even before we get the project granted, to get into an agreement that they will share the experiences and they will interconnect the distributed repositories in order to test and validate these benefits. Obviously, each of the partners will be in their own domain, and that's why when I come to the pilot, you will see the pilot's description, you will see how we are going to address that interoperability among them. In order to guarantee this interoperability and integration and quick deployment, so we are already identified and defined the methodology, which is obviously an agile methodology that is very well kind of named, but sometimes it's very difficult to explain. And we have identified 5 methods. The first one is the agile in terms of process management. The second one is the Scrum in terms of software release and software creation. The third one is the Kanban in terms of mapping all the activities in a general way towards the evolution of the project in 3 releases amongst the 3 years of the duration. And then the lean and the FDD in this case will facilitate that all the developers and all the developments as a result of that align with these 3 previous methodologies. The 5 of them are very well structured and very well known. There is nothing kind of to disrupt in here. It's just the implementation of these methodologies in a European project. In my experience, by having even agile or scrums in an industrial environment, it's very easy to adopt, or it is very easy to adapt. While in a European project, in a European context project, is very complicated because there is no the philosophies are not the same between research institutions and organizations or industrial aspects. But in here, we are putting all our efforts precisely to not only implement it and demonstrate that it's possible, but also to share and generate the best practices that can serve as a reference implementation of these methodologies for the future projects, for the future generations of projects that they can say and they can follow the best practice in how to implement and apply these methods. The first result of this methodology is precisely to create the stack, the I3 market stack for agile industrial deployments. So we have identified from the left, I know it's a very complex representation, but please stay with me only on the top, which is the versioning control of a project, call it code, towards the pilot customization, which is obviously the result of an implementation project. And then in the middle, we have the continuous integration and the continuous development integration process, which is precisely the commitment of this methodology. And of course, the deployment will be the process of demonstrating in our partners, pilots, the feasibility of that. But beyond that, we also can customize solutions for different partners or different pilots that are interested in this solution. And because we claim that it's going to be an open source and we are committed to that, so we will have the support lines to enable this adoption from other communities or other industries. We also have other big industries in the consortium, GFT and IDEMIA, that are also considering do that extensions beyond the project. But this is just to demonstrate that we will have a bigger ecosystem than the 3 pilots that we have been committed in this consortium and this project. Now, if we analyze very quickly the top line, which is GitOps, obviously is how we will facilitate the code. We will create the open source project and we will use this type of technologies. And the second on the line is the underline is the backplane. So here is the major asset that we will provide as an asset of this experience of this project. So you can imagine that we will have a set of libraries, a set of components in a Docker container or in a serverless container that we will facilitate instantiation. And this will be obviously depending on the marketplaces. We will create our own niche, our own demonstrator as a reference implementation, but we will facilitate that every pilot in our consortium and beyond, they can use this instantiation in a very, let's say, easy way for using a terminology in here. The proper words in integrative and deployment will be facilitated by this approach of the backplane. Below the backplane, we have obviously the core technology that will facilitate this one. Without being technologically in here, we are going to use these DevOps technologies to facilitate the orchestration and the provisioning. And of course, we will have the infrastructure. By design, we have well structured this and prevent that we have to invest in these cloud infrastructures and service as a service, platform as a service cost. So we will not have any restriction on that respect because the partners has been committed to that one, and we have the proper funds for doing that. Obviously, we have the visualization part, which will be independent of the backplane, as you can see in this image, but we will help us to demonstrate that the pilot's customization will be having the marketplaces results as promised in the design phase. And all in the context of agile approach, we will be able to have this replication of approaches or replication of results. So this is more or less the first result that we can see, the tangible result of using this agile methodology in a very well structured manner. And we want to include this one in all the reports in terms of technical report, management report, and hopefully, as I mentioned before, will be a good experience for also the new generations of projects to have the implementation of a methodology from the 5 methods that we have identified in here. We are trying not to overwhelm the administration and the management. Is the opposite. By having very well structured tools, we can have a very well results and good experience for the time being and for sharing. Now, by saying this one, the second impact or the second value of the project will be the open API. So we already mentioned, or I already mentioned, that we have the backplane as a major asset, and then we will be able to open this backplane by having open APIs. That doesn't necessarily means free or unsecure. So open just necessarily means the information that is necessary to be expressed or shared, what we call annotated data, or in the context of semantics, we call the semantic descriptions, will be described in there. In the same way, now we discover the information in the internet. This information will be facilitating the accessibility to the metadata descriptions that will enable what we call the economy of the data economies. So the data or the accessible data that exists will be able to be shown and will be able to be traded in this open API, via this open API, and in each specific marketplace. And just by defining, deploying, and sharing, we will be able to operate this open API. This is a very well life cycle of the open APIs defined by Amazon Web Services. So we are not really inventing here. We are relying in the best market solutions to precisely have our implementation version of all those assets for the data marketplaces. At this point, there is no real data marketplace that exists that can be sold as the best reference implementation. There are obviously some good companies working on that sphere, but we want to speed up and see if we can catch up with the methodologies that we have to be at the level of this experience, right? So we are not going to compete with the companies, but we are going to share the experience to say how the companies can do or how they do even in this public domain. This is the difference or the value that we are offering. The business innovation will come into the meaning that we will have the 3 major companies in the sector of the big market, industrial markets, which is Siemens, Atos, and IBM, to provide precisely the exploitation of this business by having new cryptocurrencies or new crypto tokens. Sorry, it's not currency, it's a token that will map the value of the data asset towards a specific virtual value. We still are in the process of defining is it going to be a new data currency, or will be only tokens that will facilitate the exchange of this information by having what we call exchange rate in the sense of tokens and the sense of validity. And for that one, we have this map on the right, which is utility model and security model are the most common ones in terms of exploitation of tokenization for data assets. Saying this one, we are focusing obviously in the community impact. One of the major aspects in the call was specifically to have this impact as a marketplace in the marketplace community. So we will have this open source. We will have this backplane as an open source project. So we will be able to communicate, to create a community, to generate the documentation, to be stable in the sense of having the code in a Git repository and all the documentation in there. Secure that the information will be obviously provided, and then we will share that information. If you allow me 1 minute, I will just look for my charger, because otherwise I will lose the energy. Sorry for that. Yes, I am back.
Okay, very good.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Yes,
you're basically close to the end of your time, so don't.
Oh, yes, okay, no problem. Yeah, I'm also very close to the presentation. So what I just mentioned is the 3 pilots are obviously in different domains. Automotive, which is one of the largest data sets that exist today in terms of industrial data. Car parts, car numbers, and obviously the production in the manufacturing are extensive. And this is provided by Siemens pilot demonstration. The industry 4.0, sorry, from Atos, where they have a marketplace already in this domain. The industry 4.0, which is obviously Siemens in Germany, they have the manufacturing of a consumer electronics sector, and we are investigating if it's possible to align the manufacturing of the car parts and automotive sector to precisely do this interaction between the different domains or different companies. And then we have the healthcare well-being. The well-being is getting very strong push at the moment. We should identify that healthcare is related to the medical, while well-being is related to keep the health of the people in a very stable way. So before getting aging, before getting sick, you have the well-being. And today, with all this consumer electronics focusing in this well-being, I think it's a good opportunity to have this human-centric approach for producing the data and consuming the data. And this is what IBM has been doing in the last years by participating not only in the European project, but also by having their own initiative in the sector of well-being. And this is the high-level approach, what we have been kind of discussing and designing. We might have different scenarios by having only data spaces, which are not necessarily marketplaces, but we should be able to interconnect this with the backplane by using the Open API, which is these red lines, by secure access and identity management. Or we can have specific marketplaces by having these verticals that are now existing as silos, but we will do this backplane to interconnect them and make them interoperable in the sense of data economy, right? So data exchange and data negotiations. Obviously, the evolution will be telling us that these marketplaces are coming in different flavors, from code to applications and to software, but we are focusing in this quadrant and this level of the data economy, or the data link data and graphs. So by the sake of time, I will just go towards this material, which is summarizing the characteristics of our marketplace, of our IT market project towards marketplaces. And we have identified, just to give an example, this Huawei approach in terms of adaptability and adaptiveness, extensible and self-contained structural, but there lack in other aspects, like, for example, that we have addressed in previous project experience, which is a bridge IoT. Now we have self-descriptive scalability, and then the IT market will complement this with the other aspects to have precisely a full vision of the marketplaces. As you can see, IT market not only address to solve 3 pilots in the project, it will address the openness of an ecosystem to have the elements that are most likely missing in the ecosystem of marketplace, which is the interoperability, the openness, and the security in all these transactions. The rest is obviously just the characteristics that we have been mentioned, just like a summary. I'm very close to the end. You can see here how these open source are our own philosophy, and we are aligning with all this philosophy of where we can contribute into the open source ecosystem, which is the quadrant 4 mainly, which is the open data, link data, and knowledge graphs. Obviously, we will have other in the quadrant 2, which is the utility applications for the pilots and the information systems. And this is just a summary of that. The slides will be available, so you can come back to why we are addressing this characteristic. This is provided by the open source initiative, which are the characteristics, and we are defining this transitional strategy for the open source in the I3 market, which is precisely an evolution in the open source business exploitation. So we are not beyond that. And last but not least is just how the marketplace will look like in the terms of the open API. I3 market will facilitate this structural instantiation by having access management to the data exchange, accountability, which is the most important in the marketplaces, as a backplane. Never will be a front end, but will facilitate the back end, the backplane, to have the marketplaces on top. This will be a better representation. By having the API as a gateway, you can have different marketplaces on the left with virtual asset as a provider and physical assets maybe as a consumer or virtual, and then we will have all this based on this API, open API reliability. And this is just a summary of the 3 current marketplaces that we have in the consortium, which is MindSphere from Siemens, Agora from Atos, and IBM Watson Health from IBM. And the idea, or kind of beyond the objectives of the project, is to also demonstrate that we can include different marketplaces for the data economy exploitation by having this open API and the standards that we have. The rest are just details, and I will probably just bypass these ones because are the technical details. But I'm happy to be here and for the first time introduce this material for everybody. So as a consortium, we have some experience in releasing open source projects, and we expect that by 2021 we might have the open source project in place of the I3 market, and hopefully we can share a success story in the open source domain. Thank you very much, and sorry for taking more minutes of the time provided. Thank you, Andreas.
Absolutely, thank you, Martin, for this really broad presentation, and it's amazing how much ground you plan to cover with this project. So the best of success. It's really intriguing. For sake of time, we'll move all the questions to the Q&A later. So if people have questions to Martin, please start typing in the questions box, and then we can recapture at the end after the final presentation, which is now given by Paco. So thanks again, Martin. Handing over to Paco. The floor is yours.
Okay. Okay. So first, thank you, Andreas, for the invitation. I'm Paco Valverde. I'm from ITI and the technical manager for the Data Ports project. Okay. So what is Data Ports? Well, Data Ports is a data platform for the connection of cognitive ports. Is our vision of the project. But mainly what we want is to take advantage of the huge amount of data that is currently generated in ports. Ports, specifically digitalized SIP ports, are introduced IoT devices, tracking systems, and also the legacy information systems. So at this moment, they have a huge amount of data, and they are not aware of the real value that this data have, because all this data usually is isolated into a specific port stakeholder. We also want to create an industrial data platform, in which data coming from different stakeholders could be improved, not only the business processes of the data owner, but of the several data consumers. Also, to achieve this industrial data platform, we have to deal with things like security and provide a secure and trustful platform. Our third point is to establish novel and cognitive AI-based applications. Usually, this data is not used in the decision-making processes, and it will be very interesting to introduce all the information from machine learning models into these business processes. And finally, we believe that if we can get all this data integrated and all this industrial data platform, and on top of that, we will be able to create cognitive applications, it will be feasible to define new business models in which data provide real value to the organizations. These are some figures from our project. It's a 3-year project that has started this year with 6 million budgets, 900 person months, and there are 13 partners involved. Here we have a little overview of the consortium. We have a huge consortium in Spain, ITI, we are the coordinators, but also we have ProDevelop and Everis and consultancy companies that will provide technical support. UPV, that will deal with the semantic interoperability of the platform, and the Valencia Port Foundation, that is the research organization that links with the Valencia Port. That will be the place of one of the use cases. TrackSense for France will provide its technology related to smart containers. Also, we have two partners from Germany. First one is the University of Duisburg, specifically the Paluno Research Center, which will provide also expertise on state-of-the-art machine learning models, and the Fraunhofer Institute, that in the case will be related with the design of the architecture, the alignment with the industrial data space associations, and will provide insights about how to define the exploitation plan of the platform. We have also a huge consortium from Greece, OTE, a major telecommunications company, two research institutes, CERT and ICCS, and also the Port Authority of the Thessaloniki Port, because this is the place of our second use case. And finally, we also have IBM from Israel that will provide expertise in data governance and blockchain technologies. So these are the partners and which are our objectives. As I said, well, as you can see, we have as a main objective to showcase our platform in two relevant seaports. We have selected the Thessaloniki Port and the Valencia Port in order to use these legal entities as partners for providing us requirements of what would they need in the platform, and also to test that the platform really could work on a real use case. We also want to deal with what is called a semantic approach for data sharing, how we could simplify how data is shared between different stakeholders, defining a common vocabulary among them in the platform. We want to introduce, again, AI-based services to generate predictions and detect anomalies from the data. Very important in our platform is the introduction of a data governance framework in order to ensure that all the data is accessed only according to the granted rules. And all these technical contributions have to be defined inside engineering methodology and architecture of the platform and a set of tools. This will be the technical objectives, and from the business perspective oriented, our idea is to create a huge impact in seaports to check that they really use the data for more than the regular business processes, and to try to find new cooperation and business frameworks in which all partners or stakeholders involved in the port could collaborate to gain potential benefits. Okay, now I'm going to explain the use cases with more detail, and also the data we're going to use in this specific pilots. The first pilot or the first use case is the Valencia Port. Just some figures about the port. It's the first container port in the Mediterranean and the fifth container port in Europe. It has a huge high traffic, around 5 million TEUs. That is more or less equivalent to containers. And it's a first and last port of call over 100 regular shipping lines in the Western Mediterranean. This use case will be very related with all this container traffic. And also, we will try to introduce what is called, we will try to use the idea of the multimodal infrastructure of the port, because also it has a huge traffic from the road and with the new train terminal. This use case is going to introduce three scenarios. The first one is the containers and goods tracking. At this moment, in the port, they have deployed what is called, sorry, to use, okay. It's a Port 4.0 platform that what it does is to gather information from several IoT devices that are around the port, premises. For instance, it's quite common to get information from the access gates, okay, when a truck arrives to the access control gate, and also information about checking devices of the trucks working around the port area. Our idea is that with all this information that currently is integrated into this platform, but it's not, it's only as a historical database, we could try to get insights about KPIs like the container arrival time, the specific terminal, and also the status of the goods. If something has happened to the goods, when they are going to arrive to the destination, and so on. Our second scenario in this use case will be related with transport operations. As I said before, we are really interested in this multimodal infrastructure of the port, and data ports gives us the opportunity to integrate data from several transport suppliers, from maritime shipping lines, terminal operators that storage the containers, and road carriers and truck carriers that transport the containers to their final destination. At this moment, we can say that every organization involved in this logistic chain has its own information systems. Our idea is to try to provide a global view using data from the freight forwarding systems. Specifically, we are going to collaborate with a third-party company that will provide the solution. And on top of that, define cognitive services in order to improve the planning of these operations. In order to understand when the container is going to arrive, so the terminal operator needs to save space to store at the container, when the road carrier has to arrive to the terminal to retrieve the container, and so on. This will give a global insight about the whole process and not the process in isolation. The third scenario that we want to implement in this use case is to define a data analytics sharing platform in the context of the Port Authority. The Port Authority is the legal entity that manages all the infrastructure of the port and the access and so on, all the legal issues. Currently, they're using what is called a port community system, the Valencia Port Community System, that is a central system or a central database that stores all the signing transactions that are happening related with the container transport. Our idea is to extend this PCS in order to include advanced analytics and KPI predictions. That's one of the steps. And the second objective is also define how we could securely share data with all the authorized stakeholders and departments of the port without the need of going through this port community system. So the idea is now is on the right, you can see all the data goes to this port authority and tries to manage everything. The idea is to create connections between all these partners involved in the port. Okay, so our second use case involves the Thessaloniki port that is located in Greece. This port also has an advantageous position linked to maritime transportation and the network of the Balkans and Black Sea countries. It's very close to major European motorways and railway networks, so also is focused on or supports the multimodal transportation, and it serves containers, bulk and general cargo, as well as cruise vessels and passengers. In several times, it's a quite similar port to the Valencia port. Okay, so a very important difference is you could see here is in the picture is very close to the city. Okay, so it's very important to define the environmental impact that has this the relationship of the port with the city. The goal for the Thessaloniki use case is more or less similar to the Valencia port use case. The idea is that data ports will integrate all the existing system and devices and provide what is called a single point of reference for data exploitation. So the idea is instead of working with several stakeholders, to have only access point to be able to manage the data. The expected data sources are in the first place, the data owned by the Port Authority of Thessaloniki. Okay. On second term, we are going to introduce data from external partners. Specifically, we are going to try to integrate all the IoT sensors from the City Traffic Management Center in order to understand how the traffic close to the port area is evolving or its current status. And also OTA as a mobile phone carrier will provide information about customers on the mobility area surrounding the port. Okay, let me check it. Okay, so from these data sources, the idea with the Thessaloniki use case is to develop two main apps. The first one is a data-driven app for strategic and real-time decisions. The idea is to optimize a set of business parameters, like how to arrange the traffic inside the port, which gate access should be open and which access should be closed, and so on, according to the multiple criteria that we are going to use from the data sources. Specifically, the traffic conditions, weather conditions, the environmental factors like CO2 or noise levels in the area, and so on. And the second app is not related with cargo, but is a mobile app for the port users. Specifically, what we want to achieve with this application is to instruct them about what's the better approach to the sea for embarkation, where to wait if needed, and so on. In other words, arrange the passenger flow inside the port area. These are our two main use cases, but also in the context of the project, we have defined global use cases. Global use cases, the main difference is that they are not linked to a specific port or a specific organization. The first one is related with the smart containers. And smart containers are containers equipped with the TrackSense IoT box. That is a device that provides information. This device is attached to the container and provides information regarding the position, movement, ambient temperature, door openings, shocks, and so on. With this information, we can have a more detail of what is happening with a container on transit. For instance, we can know how many times the container doors have been opened, it has been some temperature variations, and so on. This is a very useful data that currently is not integrated in the port system. So that's one of the interests of data ports, to introduce this IoT data inside the platform. Using this data, we could provide and also improve position-based services, for instance, the estimated time of arrival of a container, because we are checking the container on transit. And also we can detect things like anomalous event notifications. The container has lost the power core and has problems with refrigeration and so on. We have a second global use case that is more related with interoperability. That is basically integrate with current solutions that manage a port or a terminal. The ProDevelop has a specific port solution suite that is called Posidonia, that is deployed in several ports. For instance, this tool could work as a port community system to manage operations and to deal with all legal bureaucracy related with customs and so on. The idea with this global use case is to evaluate if the data ports platform could be integrated with a current solution that is working in a port. So we will select external ports that have already working with Posidonia, and then we'll try to integrate with the data ports platform in order to provide two main capabilities at this moment. The first one is container data coming from the previous use case. So we will integrate IoT data from the TrackSense solution, and also to integrate AI services to the platform. That is, at this moment, one of the capabilities that is not included into this solution suite. So that's all regarding our use cases. Now I'm going to briefly present our key innovations in the project. I would say that this is a specific key innovation. This is the support federation of data sources available in ports. In ports, we have, for instance, information from the port community systems, container tracking, IoT data, terminal operating systems, and so on. So our idea is that all these different stakeholders will be part of the data ports platform, defining what they have named a data ports node, that will be able to share data among them. Okay, that will enable what we call an industrial data space. So this is one of the key innovations. At this moment, all ports, all stakeholders working in ports have their own systems, and only if the port authority enables some kind of centralized system, It's the only way they have to communicate. There's not many interaction among them. Our second key innovation is to guarantee an end-to-end secure and trustful environment for data sharing and trading. This is important because at this moment, in order to enable the port authority to talk with a container carrier, our platform has to be secure enough and to provide the data governance required to grant the specific data to a specific time and so on. Also, we want to introduce here things like the secure identity of all the partners involved in the industrial platform, introduce security guidelines, and the introduction of blockchains in order to support this trading feature. That not only we are sharing data in a secure environment, but we are going to define a mechanisms to provide trading of the data. How many data you have access, how you can get more value of your data, how you can monetize this data, and so on. Our third key innovation is to provide big data analytics capabilities to develop cognitive applications. So the idea in the Dataport platform is going to define state-of-the-art techniques to develop machine learning models and then develop cognitive services. This is a big difference because the idea here is not to train again and again a model for each specific partner, but try to define services that can be easily integrated to create cognitive applications. Cognitive applications are applications that use some kind of machine learning model that provides a decision-based support, but the developer has is unaware of what is the specificalities of the machine learning procedure underlying this cognitive service. This will help to create these applications. And finally, our fourth key innovation is that we are looking to align with the Industrial Data Space Association reference architecture. I'm not going to enter into details, but more or less we are discussing how to align all or different tasks with the specific roles and components of this reference architecture. So I'm going to conclude with the challenge ahead of this project. We are at this moment under early stages, but we have detected some data challenges that we are going to face. The first one is related with data heterogeneity. There is a wide array of information system and data infrastructures, and a port, even for the regular business processes, involve a lot of organizations, a lot of information, a lot of different data. So data heterogeneity is going to be a real challenge. Our second challenge is related with the trust and security for data sharing. Some of the stakeholders in the port are indeed competitors. So we want to boost adoption of this sort of platform. We must guarantee a secure information flow between the port stakeholders, that only the who is granted to access that data could view that data. Another challenge, not related with data, but somehow yes, because it involves data trading, is blockchain. It's a novel technology, quite novel in the port domain, and still is evolving. So we need to guarantee to the business stakeholders to trust in the blockchain, because many times many people think blockchain as all this fuss about cryptocurrencies. And the finally data challenge we need to face is how to provide accurate cognitive services, because in order to provide these services, we need high amounts of quality data. And quality data is not the same as raw data. We need data curated and with enough value in order to guarantee that the cognitive services that are providing are useful to the business. And finally, we have several challenges related with impact. The first one is that if we want to create a real impact, we really need to create a data space ecosystem by means of this data platform. And we have to show and to evaluate in the project that using this platform, we are going to improve the operations in the shipping and maritime industry. That's critical in order to guarantee that people is going to use the platform. The second impact challenge is that transparency and trust level in the content industrial data space should be guarantee, and we have to check that these transparency levels are according and compliant with the requirements of the final users. And the third impact challenge is that one of the outcomes of the project has to be to enable niche business models. Niche business models in which data from all the European ports could be an tradable asset and provide real value to not only to the ports but to external data consumers. So thank you very much for your attention. That's all from my side. So now if you have any question, feel free to ask me.
Thank you very much, Paco. Very good presentation. Really, thanks. So we have not received any questions in the meantime, also not to the previous presentations. So as a reminder, you should have the questions box as part of your GoToWebinar tool. So feel free to type whatever you may think about. In order to facilitate a little bit the discussions, or maybe to structure them, I have here on the slide a couple of topics or topical areas which you may want to think about for your questions. So before we get the concrete questions, I have a couple of ones which I came up with myself during presentation. And as we see Martin now also by video, he's the right guy I wanted to ask first. So one key difference of the i3 market from the other three data platform projects we saw is that, if I understood correctly, you're looking more at a generic open source marketplace which may be instantiated to different domains. Whereas the other three colleagues presented very domain specific or data type specific marketplaces. So one thing which I would like to understand is one of the key, let's say, obstacles in using data is also data understanding. And oftentimes this data understanding entails lots of domain knowledge, which may be more in favor of a domain-specific platform. Do you have any provisions in i3 market to facilitate, support this data understanding? Oh, you're muted again, so I hope you can.
Can you hear me? Yes. Thanks for the question. Essentially, yes, you're right. So we are not looking at the provisioning of a marketplace. So essentially, we're focusing in facilitating what we call backplane, which are a set of tools that will facilitate the enhancement of other marketplaces. Of course, in order to demonstrate that we are in a good track, we have 3 major pilots in different domains that are precisely complementary. So that's the difference in terms of other projects. I think it's a very well selection of domains, including ports, including farming, in automotive, well-being. That will be a good set for the community to complement the different marketplaces. But our main contribution will not be a marketplace itself. So will be those tools that will facilitate the security aspect, the data economy, and of course the extensibility of a data sharing, instantiation of data spaces. For the second part of the question, which I also agree is one of the major challenges, how to in a domain specific extend this to a different marketplaces. So let's think in the way of a transaction, in how we trade assets. So you might have accountability of a specific data amounts in a specific domain, for example, well-being or healthcare, which are very, let's say, valuable. And then you can put the price of that. You can say, not in terms of not of currencies, just in terms of value. You can say, I would like to exchange maybe the double of the data from ports, because I understand that this is more valuable for you guys, because you might be in a situation that you want to identify the age standard people in a cruise going to your port. Also to facilitate your own business cases, right? To enable maybe shops, to enable maybe articles or products, and that will be the double of the cost. I set that value because I am the owner of that data. And then as a consumer, you can say, I agree on that, and I subscribe to your offer. And this type of transactions, without even having a domain specific, even investigating the content, we are able to produce. And this is the type of operation that we will be able to facilitate. Now, who is going to define the value, the real value of the data asset? So of course, the domain experts. is like in Amazon, right? In Amazon, the price of an app or the price of a movie is not set by the companies. It's set by the let's say the digital generator in this case. And we will facilitate that one, what we call smart contracts. So in smart contracts, we will contain descriptions, fields of information that will be metadata. Some of them will be exposed for enabling the offerings, but some of them will be just kept in the smart contract in order to exchange that information once that you subscribe. And in this way, we will protect what we call the sensitive data from the what we call metadata, which will be going to the public domain. This is more or less the design strategy that we have. And I think it's very innovative in the sense of using semantic technologies, but is well known in the semantic domain, because this is how the search engines works in the Google, in the online shops, and that's why we are just adopting these technologies or this philosophy into the data economy, which is now the momentum, right? Because the matureness in the semantic domain exists. Now we just need to transport this one into this one, with the challenges and the implications that it has.
Okay, very good. Great answer. Thanks. Resonating a little bit on a question I received from Ana Garcia, the Secretary General of BDVA, about collaboration among the 4 projects. I think there's a good opportunity between i3 Market and the other 3 domain-specific ones to learn from each other, right? I mean, you have thought about more generic solutions, but the domain-specific ones may have very specific concerns, which may be common across the 3 different projects too. So I think this could be a nice opportunity to, in regular time periods, to get in touch with each other, to learn from each other. So in a sense, you could get some, let's say, requirements from other use cases for your generic architecture, and the specific ones could get some inspiration on architectural elements which you thought about. Cool.
Yeah, if the question is again for me, yeah, I do agree. So we should find the points of convergence. I immediately can see 3 of them. So the interoperability strategy will be at least from the ports project will be interoperability, and I know the team in UPV that are working those works. From the point of management of these strategies in terms of agile methodologies, I think will be also relevant in see our work, because we are putting really extensive work efforts in doing that, because in the several years that I have been involved in coordinating projects, never had the opportunity to really implement these strategies, either because it was not the time, or was not the opportunity, or was not mature enough in the industrial domain. But now we are in this sprints of innovation that will facilitate the time and the interest from the community as well, because maybe in other times where, oh, this is industrial, this is research. No, now we are in these innovation actions that will facilitate this ecosystem. And the last one, but not least, is the value of the data, right? So data economy now is at the moment is a buzzword, and hopefully we can, in these 4 projects, translate that in a meaningful context. Yeah, thank you.
I mean, we could even think about, now that you mentioned the agile approach, having the domain-specific platforms as customers on site doing one of your agile iterations somewhere in the future as a kind of additional interaction opportunity.
Well, that would be a major challenge, because we don't have any of the projects. I assume we have this as a task, but yeah, we will do our best. I think I know a couple of the people in the projects by coincidence in conferences or other project collaboration, but we will do our best. So.
Cool. It would also be a challenge for the others to do so and to really understand what they can contribute. But I think that's a really nice opportunity for getting together. Thanks, Martin. Great.
You're very welcome.
Let me move to a little different topic. This is actually inspired or raised from a colleague who is in charge of the BDVA task force on legal issues. And Paco touched on this a little bit. So the question is related to if you're dealing with data coming from different organizations, which may have even different legal frameworks, like if different from GDPR or locally different GDPR instantiations. They may have a fear of losing control over the data when sharing. So the question is, what could be challenges, also a little bit from the legal governance side of things, that would be there. As you raised this, Paco, I was going to ask Theo maybe first what's his view is on that, because I go way back, and we also had an agriculture project with colleagues from Wageningen, and I understood that the, let's say, fear in all this food supply chain is rather high for what concerns losing control over the information along the supply chain. So maybe Theo can say something about that, how you approach this problem with interorganizational data governance, losing control over data.
Yes, Andreas, thank you, and you remember very well. This is a case, and actually Wageningen University that you mentioned has really made an important progress during the last years to facilitate the overall, data sharing issue and enable to farmers and other stakeholders from the food industry to share data. So in the legal part and governance part, at the moment, there are on place specific guidelines and directives from farmer organizations, pan-European farmer organizations like Copa-Cogeca, and also published and endorsed by DG Agri, specific guidelines on data sharing and data ownership. So in that sense, we aim to follow these guidelines and directives. From the other side, I have to mention that the concept that we have set up is really making the data owners to be the ones that will select how their data will be treated. So for sure, the FSM platform will encompass an data brokerage service for sharing data and for enabling to stakeholders to even monetize their data. As I highlighted, it is a real issue right at the moment that the ones that need to inspect, to perform an inspection on a production site or on a farm, right now they don't have access to this data. So it's really important to tackle this challenge together with the one of that when you share it, you know what will happen, let's say, with your data. And there are ways to, let's say, prove and bulletproof this overall thinking by the design of by the way that the FSM platform is designed. So definitely, it's something that we have as one of our top priorities, and that's why there is a legal partner, the University of Vienna, dealing with this complex issue, together with the Wageningen University, which is an institute really active on that domain.
Thank you very much, Theo. Very good to know. Anybody else who wants to add something to that? Do you want to elaborate a little bit more, Paco, in the data port situation? Or nothing to add here?
Okay, I'm trying to connect the webcam again.
Okay.
So, okay, imports, well, every domain has its own requirements, challenges, and so on. Imports, the real problem that we are going to deal is that we are defining an industrial data platform. There are a lot of stakeholders inside this platform, okay? So all of them is like they are sharing the same system. In fact, they are sharing the same system. So there are some competitors in the port. For instance, I have no problem to share data with the port authority, for instance, because the port authority, I have to have some legal agreements with them and so on. So I have no problems to share data with the port authority. But if I had to share this data with this carrier and this other one, I want to be sure that if we are in the same platform, then I'm going to see by any means the data I'm sharing. So the problem here is a problem of more these technological solutions. In fact, we are going to introduce blockchains as a trustful to define this trustful environment. In everyone has has data cannot be tampered and so on and so on. But there is some kind of still organization. I don't know if well, they are scared sometimes that if we put all the data in something that we are not managing at all, or that goes so to a platform that comes from even this project, what will happen with that data? So that's something that we have to provide tools that really guarantee security, that really can be seen as truthful and so on. Because if not, it will be very difficult to get adoption from them.
Thank you. Anybody else who wants to add something? Spiros, any additions?
Well, yeah, I was thinking about it. So we follow an entirely different approach, first of all. What I mean about this, first of all, we need to follow what and accommodate what is already being done in the geospatial community, people producing and using geospatial data, ensure that we build trust, and what I mentioned about protecting the IPR, meaning that we integrate digital watermarking, zero watermarking techniques currently applied in order to know exactly who used part of the data. So the basic idea is that we have a tiered architecture. So at the first point, where a data provider only wants to publish their metadata, these are available for purchase, they can do it, nothing happens to them. The second point is the one we also want to provide incentives to owners, is let them be convinced that they can share their data with us. We can produce value-added services from them. We can integrate IPR protection schemes within these services, and we can generate revenue for them which they didn't have before joining the platform. So it's a slow process, building trust, reusing existing norms and practice from the domain, but leveraging it so that we can expand more users, more intelligent services. So to put it in another idea, think of it having this marketplace as a somewhere where, regardless of how small you are as a company producing data, you can provide something to the level of Google Maps, provide analysis services you could find in an Amazon or whatever hosted Jupyter environment, or even services provided by Carto, for example.
Nice, very good. Thank you, Spiros. Great.
I can also say something in this relation, if you allow me.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting what was mentioned because everything relates to the business case, right? So in every marketplace, there are different business models in terms of exploitation. By having now the data economy, or what we call the enabling of the data economy, so we need to consider who is the major beneficiary of that business. So eventually, the owner of the data is never the beneficiary. So I think we should address this one as a major, not objective, but at least as a major intention, because at the end of the day, the processor in the terms of GDPR is that person that will kind of a broker the information, right? So I will get it, I will maybe annotate it, I will maybe exploit it and sell it, and I will just give you your what we agreed in a contractual relationship. But in these new models, we can say that dynamically we can adjust pricing based on the demand of these aspects. It's kind of a Robin Hood model as well, right? Data Hood. So if there's someone that is able to pay more for the data that you are giving to me, I should be able to share that increase to incentivize that. Talking about the spirit of incentives, without inventing something like I give you credits, or because that will be a break-in model. And here we are talking, we have an offer for more value because this person is able to pay it because he's interested. It's kind of about the pricing in the flights. So if there is more demand, there is more price. In here, if there is more price, I will be able to share more shares with you because my process is covered already as a broker or as a processor. And I think this is a good discussion to even maintain between different projects to not to adopt the same model because that will depend on the domain, but at least to have a good set of best practices and different models that we can consider. And if it applies for one of the industries, it will be their decision. Our commitment as a project is just to enable the different opportunities and discuss and articulate what are the new business cases. And I do agree that Spiros has a good. I like your vision, Spiros, because I was not able to pass this information to my consortium because they said in my marketplace I already have my customers, which is automotive section, and they are very consolidated. And the other domain like manufacturing, they are very consolidated. But in new common environments like fintechs, in new common environments like maybe the ports, or even in other agriculture, there are so many variations. And now with COVID is a good example that everything can happen, that maybe new models needs to be analyzed, not adopt because that's a very high risk, but at least analyze, and these practices can be maybe discussed and represented. I see a good.
Let me clarify a couple of things, if I may. We are outside the scope of the GDPR. By design, we have tried to keep any private personal data outside the scope of our marketplace because it is already challenging enough to build it. We didn't want something in addition. Second, several of the data sets that we will have in the marketplace have been produced following tens of million euro investments. So these are extremely high value. We need to keep that in mind. They might be purchased as an API for 100 euro per month, but in order to produce them, it took tens of millions of euros. And another thing, in order to make everyone's life easier, what is integrated within the platform, regardless of the standard metadata in whatever schema they are, we also have automated metadata. A facility, think of it as a data profiler. So having the data in the marketplace, we can analyze them, we can provide additional information from the schema to anything that relates to the distribution of the values, etc., without providing the data itself. So the idea is to provide as much as possible information about what the data contains, its quality, its coverage, its relevance for all the various topics that it may, domains in the economy that it may relate to before the actual purchase, because this is really important.
Yeah, very good point. I think you have a very specific setting where these data assets are so of high value compared to maybe others which are also maybe much more fine-grained and cheaper to collect. Very good point. I very much like these discussions, especially that from the data governance part, they moved subtly to the data value discussions, which is really great because after all, we're in the data value PPP. So I appreciate that very much and understand what are the different value dimensions that may be relevant for the different platforms. Great. So with that, I didn't get any more additional questions which may not have been touched also before. As I said, the data value part was one of the strong parts we had also as prepared questions, but you touched on that very nicely. I think we have very good potential for interactions among these industrial data platforms. So let me just show you the concluding slide for the next steps we're planning. So as indicated at the beginning, we will make available the webinar recordings on the Big Data website. We'll take a couple of days to make them ready and also accommodate them with the slides of the presenters. We're trying to write a very short summary report after all the 3 seminars that will have taken place, so we can feed into the planning of the next seminars. And this will be then, of course, be followed up by the further online sessions I indicated, depending on the interesting topics we started to touch. With that, let me thank you very much. Let me thank you, our colleagues from the Commission, for opening the scene and the context. Let me especially thank the project presenters for the presentations and their excellent discussions. And of course, also, I would very much like to thank our participants. So we had up to 75 participants at the time, so it's quite some interest on this topic. So that was really great to see. So with that, we're at the end of this webinar. If you want to join us tomorrow, same time, 2 p.m. for the webinar on the personal data platforms. Looking forward to see you again. And until then, have a good afternoon and see you in the future, maybe face-to-face at some point. Thank you very much.
Thank you all. Goodbye.
Thank you, Andreas. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Bye
Thanks,
bye.
Andrea. See you.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Take care.